So with my dad, not having anything, or we had to leave everything behind, he pretty much set foot in America with $5 US dollars in his wallet. So we had to start from the bottom up. My father knew he needed an education, so he pursued that, and he found his way into a vocational school to be an electrician. Going to study to provide made me realize I won't have the ability to give back unless I actually have gotten an education and a good career. I guess it inspired me. So I had goals of becoming a doctor, and in my mind, being a doctor and helping patients was giving back to the community, but I ended up in education. In that first semester, I taught middle school life science and physical science, and I hated it. It was not what I thought it would be. All of those kids at the time, I had an acronym for them, and I called them WOW, worst of the worst. And I'm thinking, this is not for me. So every day I was banging my head against the wall, like, what am I doing? What did I get into? But that's okay, it's paying bills. And so that Friday before winter break, I remember being so excited because I'm like, I'm out of here. I don't have to see these kids for 2 weeks, and I'll worry about getting through second semester and then just quitting at the end of the year. So that evening I drove out. Some guy was veering off from the carpool lane. So he came in and he hit the Honda Civic. Both cars hit me from the back. So they rushed me to Huntington Memorial, and I was in a coma for a few months. So at that time, I had, all my friends, all my colleagues come visit. And so one of the teachers, who was kind of like my mentor, because she knew I was struggling that first semester, she brought in a bag of letters from the students. And as I was reading through, hundreds of cards from these kids saying, we miss you, and I'm thinking, how much of an impact could I have made in one semester? But at that moment, I remember sitting in the hospital and looking outside the window, and I thought to myself, you know what? God kept me alive so I can continue fulfilling his mission, which is to service the kids. I had started the program, and Dr. Daniel Lawson, he was one of the professors for one of the classes, and I thought, I couldn't do this. I can't do this. It's just too much work. And I emailed him. I remember saying, hey, Dr. Lawson, I don't know if I'll get these papers done. I think I'm going to withdraw. I don't know if this is for me. Maybe it's not the right time. And I remember he picked up the phone and he called me. He said, we're not going to quit on you. You're not going to quit on yourself. And he said, I'll give you time. Just get it done. And so at that moment, I thought, if he can believe in me, I think I can do it, and so I need to believe in myself. So currently I am the director of an Eastville STEM Academy. We talk about access for all students, so as much as teachers want to say, hey, we need to set GPA limits on any of the kid who wants to apply to STEM, I said no, because sometimes even that 2.0 kid, they're good with tinkering, they're good with building computers. They might not be good in, in their language arts or another subject area that's not their strength, but we have to believe in them like Dr. Lawson believed in me. We have to believe in these kids. I have this quote, and it is, you can't be what you can't see. And the reason why I feel like I kind of live by that is because unless I had seen my dad go to school, I'm not sure that I would have been able to. So I think the modeling piece and just showing students is very important, because I've seen the flip side of it when people didn't believe in students, how they just shut down. We have to see the potential in the students, and that's what pushes them. That's what will make them, go beyond. I had a group of students, they all graduated from high school. I'm still in touch with them. They're now doctors, they're now engineers, working for big companies. So to see them grow up and now to be engineers and to be doctors, to me, that potential, imagine if nobody saw that in them, where would they be?
Good afternoon. If you would, look at your neighbor, and I want you to say, Sabona. And your other neighbor, who's even more good-looking, Sabona. 2 years ago, I first came up here to say Sabona. And those of you who've been a part of the community know what that means. Zulu term for hello, but essentially means I see you. And how important it is to see each other in this day and time. In the midst of so much turmoil around the world, it's so important to see each other. So several years ago, I had taken my children, we were at the park, and my son had jumped onto the jungle gym, and he was calling me from a distance, and he said, "Mom, Mom, look at me, look at me." And to that response I gave, "I hear you." And again, he said, "Mom, Mom." But you see, I was engrossed in multitasking, looking at my phone. I'd like to say I was probably responding to emails from Mark Stanton for work, but nevertheless, my son repeated, "Mom, listen." And I said again, I hear you. And to which my son said, "Then listen to me with your eyes." He got my attention instantly because first of all, I thought, that's pretty good. I like the play on words. But he was getting to a deeper point. When we're listening, we need to give our eyes and our ears and our heart attention to the person who is speaking. So I want to say, faculty, it's going to be an amazing year, but I think we have 3 opportunities as we go into this year, considering all the social discourse. That first thing would be listen. Let's listen with our eyes, with our ears, with our hearts, giving our full attention to those who are in our presence. Second would be, let's learn. We think sometimes that education is a one-way process, but we get to learn from each other as well as from our students. As my grandmother says, get your edumacation. Make sure you get your edumacation. So this summer, I got to learn from some of the best of you here, hearing from Alex John and Chris Collins and their book Whiteout, and participating with Karen Longman, with a group of scholars from around the CCCU on Diversity Matters, and hearing from Tabitha and doctoral higher ed, and engrossing in some important conversations, hearing from Dr. Rakshan Fernando and his challenge to us. We can learn from each other, and we can learn from our students. Third, that we love. And when I'm talking about love, I'm not saying a passive feeling. I'm seeing a choice, a choose, an action, to choose to actively love even those who may hate us. In fact, one philosopher says, you have never truly loved until you have loved someone who hates you. If you're on the margins, you get a lot of practice with that. So love. What does the Lord require of us? To do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with our Lord. Let's pray. Dear Lord, you are the Alpha and the Omega. You are the beginning and the end. You are the great I am. You are the Lord of lords and the King of kings. So we bow our heads to you, for there is none greater than you. And so, Lord, as you are our source, you are our strength, you are our joy, you are our hope, we look to you this year. Every faculty in this room, every person under the sound of my voice, would you give us your grace, your strength, to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly. In your name, we give you all the praise and we give you all the thanks. Amen. Amen. At this time, we're going to watch a video. Please pay attention to this.
We are a comprehensive university with a lot going on. And I so appreciate the way everyone in this room leans into your particular niche of that and the way you help us fulfill all the goals and all the responsibilities that we have as a comprehensive university. So can I tell you that I had a temptation? My temptation was to sit down on the presidential bench and give this talk this afternoon. But I'm gonna withstand that. We have a lot of things to share with you. I'm just gonna launch into a few of those, and we have a full afternoon with some, I think, very interesting and intriguing and thoughtful things that we'll be covering and addressing. And my hope is that this will be a time when there are 2, 3, 4 things that stand out to you that you will walk out the door with this afternoon and say, I'm gonna think about that, or I'm gonna implement that in a somewhat different way in my life. But let's begin with some of the news and updates that we have about things that are going on, things that are going to happen, and some that are already in transition at the university as we enter this year. The first one, I'm sure, doesn't impact too many people and won't be a big issue for many of you. That is, we're going to change our LMS. Yeah. So goodbye, Sakai, is the lingo here, right? It's time for us to move on to something that's more effective and more beneficial to you as faculty members in the way you engage with your students. And so we had a large group of faculty and staff who participated in the sandbox exercises this last spring, where they got in and played with some of the various alternatives that we might choose, and they chose Canvas. And so you can see some of the things that are listed there as advantages of the Canvas system, but everyone who's been part of it says it's so much better than what we have. We're going to be rolling this out over the next year and a half. And that will allow you as a faculty member the choice of when you migrate. So not everything will migrate this fall. We'll get started on that. But we're committed to making this a seamless process. It's a lot of effort to go through this transition. There will be workshops and seminars. There will be in-person opportunities for you to meet with someone from the ITT office. There will be opportunities for self-paced or on-demand webinars so that you can have some ideas about how to go through the migration process. But we want to allow sufficient time for you to engage that, and you'll see more details about that in the Provost newsletter as we enter the fall term. One of the things you heard John talk about this morning is pride of place. And we're aware that with some of the challenges that we've had fiscally over the last few years, some areas of campus have deteriorated. They aren't looking as good, they aren't performing as well as they ought to. And so we're entering this period of pride of place. Well, how's that going to impact you as a faculty member? So some of you, especially those of you in class, have heard Ryan Montague's stand-up routine. You know, he's a stand-up comic, and so he does a routine at a lot of the class events. How many of you have heard Ryan give one of his riffs on things? Yeah. So he takes pot shots at just about everything at APU, including me, but especially his good friend Ryan Hartwig, you know, who often gets confused, or he says they get confused. But one of the things that he's done a hilarious routine on are some of the restrooms we have on campus. And especially because he's housed in the Ronald building, he will pick on the first floor restrooms in Ronald. So I want to tell you, Ryan, you're going to have to change your routine because they're going to remodel the first floor restrooms in Ronald, as well as the upper and lower Turner Center and first floor Mary Hill, which is also atrocious. One of the things I experienced when I was doing a guest lecture this spring in a class over in the second floor of Mary Hill was how horrible the classroom was. Honestly, it's just horrible. You walk in and the walls are scarred. There's clutter everywhere. There's an overhead projector. Is anyone still using overhead projectors? Okay. Maybe a couple of you are. All right. So there was an overhead projector, but showing its disuse, it was piled high with junk. I mean, it essentially had become another countertop in the room. And there were, I think, 4 types of chairs in that room, right? And so when you look at some of what we experience around campus, And I looked in that room, and I came in 1990, and I know that there were at least 2 chairs in that room that were here when I came, right? And they were old then. So we have some ways to go in cleaning up our classrooms, but there's some things that are going to start to happen this year. 75 to 80 classrooms over the next year will get new carpet and fresh paint. And that's an attempt just to raise the learning environment. And I know carpet and paint is not everything, but if you're an aesthetic, if you care at all about aesthetics, it matters. And I think it impacts learning. And so we're going to try to clean up some of our classrooms. Some classrooms, where it's appropriate, will get chair rails so the walls don't get dinged up as much. And some classrooms are going to get entirely new furniture. In addition, we are in the process now of beginning a migration to wireless projection in the classrooms, so that instead of having to hook up your computer or your device, you'll be able to link up electronically. Isn't that good? Yeah, and so that's going to happen and roll out over the next year and a half or so, but you can expect to start seeing that in classrooms. So that's a very powerful change. We also want to ask your help, because as I've talked with the folks who are over our facilities, they're anxious to help meet your needs. So if you're in a classroom where there's a broken table or a broken chair, or there's some equipment or stuff that doesn't belong there, call and let somebody know. In every classroom, there's a wall plaque that looks like the one here on the slide that gives you the instructions of how to contact them. If you'll make a quick call, it'll take away some of your frustration, and it'll make for a better learning environment. So we're hopeful that this can be one of the things that will improve our campus. There's another area that many faculty have expressed a concern about. And I'm also concerned about this because I think it's an important need. And that is to have a place where faculty can gather for informal meetings, for interactions, without students around, but to have an opportunity to have some conversation that's confidential, to maybe have small meetings, to gather together for lunch or for dinner, and to talk about your work and to discuss the things that are going on in your life. So I'm happy to announce that I've been able to work with facilities, and we are going to take some space back over in Lower Turner, and we are going to make it into a new faculty commons. There'll be a wall. Yeah, thank you. There'll be a wall that will separate this area off. It'll still have an open feel. There will be high and low tables. There'll be some softscape furniture, kind of a Starbucks kind of feel. But our intent is that this would be a community gathering place for faculty. There will be coffee and tea available there at all hours. For meals, you can carry in meals from any of the eating venues here on East Campus. Now, I know for those on West Campus, we're looking for a place there, and we're anticipating that we'll be doing some needs assessment around that and hopefully do that. But in the meantime, if you can jump on the trolley and come over and enjoy the new faculty commons, that will be developed and finished by the holidays this fall, and I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's a time for interdisciplinary dialogue and discussion, and over time, special functions. When we host events where we welcome faculty, or where faculty move on, or they retire, I think this can be a place where we can have those kinds of opportunities to celebrate each other and the work that we do here at APU. You saw on the slide from last year, many of our faculty and academic areas have generated some fantastic grants over the last year. And you can see that the dollars start to add up pretty readily, but they're in meaningful areas, helping us with program development, helping us with student needs. These are exciting opportunities that we have, and your fellow colleagues have engaged as principal investigators with other members of the team to create these grants and have them awarded. So congratulations to each one who's listed on this. To help you manage those grants, we're going to be securing some new grant management software that is going to really make the process easier for the development of the grant, the routing of it, and submission. and then to manage the budget process on the back end. We'll be giving some more information in the Provost newsletter about this, but that's coming, and I think it's another major advance from our Office of Research and Grants. Don Isaac and his team have been doing great stuff there, helping faculty with grant opportunities, and so look for that coming down the road. You may have also heard over the spring that we had a major emphasis on undergraduate strategic enrollment. And so if you have looked at what's happening in our undergraduate population, that's the traditional residential population here on campus, it's gone down over the last 3 years. This is consistent with what's happening nationwide. Most institutions are finding it more difficult to attract traditional undergraduate students. Part of that is the cost, part of that is the competition, part of that is the lower number of high school graduates nationally. And so that combined effect has brought our population down more than we wanted to at this point in time. So we had a large group of people, about 60 people in total, and then a smaller team overseeing that as an executive kind of committee of this project. And they've been working for several months now to come up with a plan of how we can reach out and hopefully find a few more students who would find APU the place that would identify with their life calling and their life mission. So the plan is, through a lot of effort, to increase our population by up to 660 students over the next 5 years. That's a significant endeavor. And our goal is to work hard at doing that because we believe in what we offer at the traditional undergraduate level. But I have to tell you, it's a challenge because all of the forces that are external to the university are against us in that. There are a lot of things that we have to deal with to overcome that. One of the things I'm most excited about this project is that undergrad enrollment management is now working in an integrated fashion with our academic leadership. Historically, undergrad enrollment has recruited students to the university as a whole. And they've appealed to various aspects of our identity, but especially to student life and to athletics and some of those things that we do quite well. But there hasn't been as strong an emphasis on academic selection. And so this project is changing that. There's a very strong connection now around academic majors and the interest of students in particular programs that might attract them to APU. In addition, we're continuing to emphasize student success. And so you've seen a lot of things coming out of Vicki Bowden and Keith Hall's offices about how you can speak into students who are struggling, how you can help them along the way. And we want to continue those efforts because student success means if someone has come to APU, we want to help them be able to graduate from APU. And we can do that if we notice when they're struggling and step in and take some intervening steps to accomplish that. And then we're also going to expand our enrollment outreach to some new territories. You know, many of the students we attract are from California or from the Southwest, but we're going to continue to reach out to a couple more geographic areas. Notably, it appears that there is a sweet spot for us in Texas, and so you may see a few more Texans in your classes in the future, but we're going to be reaching out more across the nation to some areas that are particularly interested in the kind of undergraduate education we'd have at APU. Along with that, we're looking at how we can offer the degrees that these students want. And so we've seen some new programs, some new majors, and some new minors that have been created and are being implemented. You can see those on the board. Sometimes it's just a matter of how we frame it, what the name of the program is that attracts student attention, but it's also the content and are we offering the kinds of degrees that students are wanting to, again, fulfill their life mission. They feel like they're inclined to move in a certain direction. Are we offering the degrees that will help them to do that? So I'm excited that many of our departments have stepped into this territory and have created or modified what they're doing to meet student demand. We're also looking at graduate and professional growth. This is an important aspect of who we are. Our regional campuses are an important part of our identity. And so it is so exciting to see how many of our faculty now have their offices at regional campuses, and we're calling them campuses because they really are. We have at many of these campuses 4, 5, 6 different disciplines, and the faculty are comprising kind of a mini APU experience there as they share interdisciplinarily between themselves and the members of other departments. And so these campuses are going to continue to grow. Part of that initiative is starting some new undergraduate professional programs. So the challenge at the undergraduate level is that there are some students who cannot afford to come to APU. I had a parent tell me last week that their family budget involved setting aside $4,000 a month so that their daughter could come to APU. Now, clearly that goes beyond tuition. It gets into living costs and some of the other things that are involved in supporting their daughter in her education. But many of us would not be able to afford $4,000 a month. We provide scholarships and help to many families, but we need to keep doing things that will help people who want an APU education get it. And so this year we started psychology programs and criminal justice programs in the regional campuses so that students who come to us from the community colleges can join one of those programs and get a bachelor's degree. We're looking at 2 or 3 or 4 other select programs that we're going to roll out in that same kind of way to help meet that need. On the graduate side, we continue to do a lot of things in nursing and the School of Behavioral and Applied Sciences and the School of Business, and reaching out and saying, what is it that people are looking for and how can we meet those needs? But to do it well, we're going to have to do it both in the face-to-face environment and in the virtual environment. And so many of our programs are being offered in both modalities, so that you can either choose to take the course face-to-face or you can choose to take it online. And so we're looking at hybrid courses and hybrid programs so that students can really get the education in the way that they need to or that fits into their life. And we're also starting some new graduate programs. So you can see 3 that have been started here just in the last year, and the way we're looking at those programs as opportunities for growth and development of our overall offerings in the Academy at APU. One of the things I announced at this time last year was the implementation of our senior adjunct program. I'm really pleased that we had 81 senior adjuncts who completed the registration process and did the diversity and faith integration online modules to be able to qualify as senior adjuncts. These are people who are contributing significantly to your programs across undergraduate, graduate, and professional programs. And they make a real difference, and we want to honor them and recognize the work that they're doing. This year, for the first time, we opened up our writers' retreat as space was available to senior adjuncts. And I'm pleased to say that we got a report from one senior adjunct, wrote to Don Isaac as she was leaving the retreat, said, "This morning at 10 a.m., as I was getting ready, packed up to leave, I submitted my journal article." That's the kind of thing that happens at the writers' retreats for many of our full-time faculty, and now our senior adjuncts are able to participate in that as well. This summer I've been doing some reading, and we all know that there are challenges in higher education today. These challenges, and in this article that I'm going to cite, comes from Academic Impressions. And they cited 6 of these challenges. You can see them on the board. Finding resources to grow at the same time that we're trimming programs and budgets. How do we do both concurrently? Lowering costs and improving quality at the same time. Increasing public trust and support during a time of declining funding. Expanding into new markets without losing focus or chasing opportunities that create mission creep. Ensuring liberal arts remain both relevant and financially sustainable. Shifting education models and support systems to serve a changing student demographic. So these are challenges. How are we going to face them? One of the things that this article went on to stress that I thought was particularly helpful is that the time of change that we're in is so striking because it isn't similar to what we've experienced historically. So most often in life, you kind of develop a storehouse of knowledge and experience that you use to apply to the challenges that you face. The difficulty with some of the things we're facing now is that they're on entirely new turf. Our storehouse of knowledge doesn't apply. We're having to learn new things to be able to adapt. Heifetz and Linsky out of Harvard refer to these as adaptive challenges versus technical challenges, because adaptive challenges require us to experiment and to risk, to try new things that we haven't tried before. And part of that involves this idea of smart failure. It means that we have to be willing to try some things even if they end up failing, as long as we learn from the failures. So a smart failure is when you take the failure and you think about it and you learn so that you don't repeat it again. That's the challenge for us today in higher education. And so what I've been thinking about this summer is thinking, do we spend enough time thinking and planning and giving deep consideration to the challenges we're facing? So in the article, they talk about anticipatory thinking. This is the ability to identify trends and potential opportunities and challenges in the wider external environment, and to understand the strategic implications embedded within them. That means we have to notice what's going on around us. So you're probably reading Inside Higher Ed, you're probably reading the Chronicle of Higher Education, you're reading what's in the newspaper. If you're not, I would encourage you to start doing that. Get on those listservs. Because there are things happening that at first we might discount. At first we might say, oh, come on, that's a fad, or that's just a passing thing. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. For instance, free college. The idea of free college has been around for a long time, hasn't it? People have mentioned it. Oh, that would be an aspiration. It's something we ought to do. When Bernie Sanders was running for president, he made it one of his key tenets of his platform. We ought to provide a free college education. Now, we know nothing is ever free, right? I mean, the taxpayers are going to pay for it, but the student would not in that kind of a model. And that thing that seemed beyond the rainbow is suddenly true in a lot of states across the United States. So, for instance, some of our colleagues, Dina Porterfield, who used to be here, is now back in New York. She woke up one morning to find that the governor had announced that their state was going to provide a free college education through the public institutions to students. And immediately that had impact on their enrollment for that year. So ideas that we might think are spurious suddenly become real, and we have to grapple with them. One of the things we've always taken for granted at APU, we have a large school of education, and we educate many of the teachers across the state of California, and especially in Southern California. I've always said that both in teaching and in nursing, you can't go into a school or you can't go into a hospital and not find one of our APU graduates there. But what's happening in teaching? One of the ideas, again, that's been posited but now has gained traction is the expectation that schools will be able to offer a teaching credential within the undergraduate degree. At most, with a slight tag on, but still at the undergraduate level. And so you look at that and say, how does that impact the way we have set up our School of Education? And they know this, they're already working on it, and they know that we have to find new pathways. So there are things that we are seeing, and there are things that we haven't seen yet that we need to pay attention to. And so my challenge is for us to spend time thinking. So I'll tell you what I told the academic cabinet last week as we had our kind of retreat before all the kickoff events. I asked each person on the academic cabinet to schedule at least one day, and preferably 2 or 3, at least 3 times during this academic year, more if they can make it work, where they will separate themselves, get out of their office, find a place where they can think. Just to step out of doing, because we're all so busy doing, but to step back and think about what we're doing. And so I would like to extend that challenge to you as well. Will you find time in your calendar to set aside so that you're not preparing a class, you're not grading a paper, but you're thinking about your program, your department, and what we're doing as a university in your area. And to help that along, we're going to announce soon some guidelines for some small anticipatory thinking grants. Ways that you can help us get better as an institution. You can help us lean into the future rather than just reacting to it. And so we'll announce those guidelines in the Provost newsletter, and my hope is that some of you will take us up on that and dedicate some of your time and your opportunities of mind to considering how we move forward with adaptive solutions and new opportunities for the future. One of the things that we recognized a couple of years ago was what I mentioned just a moment ago about undergraduate professional programs. And so I want to clarify why we're doing that. Because I know there's been a little bit of confusion, and some people have said, well, why are we doing that? Why don't we just recruit them to the Azusa campus? But again, not everyone can afford to come to the Azusa campus. Maybe their life circumstances don't allow them to move here. Maybe the cost of coming here and leaving employment that they have in their geographic area. But we have found that there are many people who would like to get an APU degree. And what's interesting, we've even started offering general education courses to help some of these students who don't quite have everything from the community college. And you might say, well, why didn't they just finish all that at the community college where the cost is less? But it's because they can't always get the courses they need. And so they're willing to come to us for those courses and then for the courses to finish their major. And so I'm excited that we have this opportunity. And in fact, it's now become critical that we do it. So it's one of those things, you kind of recognize the trend, you recognize the need, and you try to step forward for that. And then what you find is that other people are seeing that same kind of need. So one of the challenges we're facing in the state of California is that our population at large doesn't value higher ed in quite the same way that it used to. You know, the automatic assumption that everybody would want their kids to go to college? Not everybody's feeling that today, in part because of the cost. And so we've got to find ways to make college more affordable and accessible. And those terms have been in vogue for about the last 5 years. But part of the challenge around that is that once people start thinking that way, government officials recognize that their own survival depends on meeting what people are feeling. So I can tell you what's going on now in the governor's office. Is the governor is looking and saying, what can we do to incentivize or penalize higher ed institutions around helping students go from community college to a 4-year degree? And one of the biggest ways that this is happening is around Cal Grants. So if you understand Cal Grants, they are grants given to the student. They aren't given to the institution, they're given to the student so they can go to the college of their choice. But most often, these are the neediest students, the lowest income students, whose FAFSAs help them qualify for this kind of aid that the government supplies. For a while, the governor was saying, we're going to take that away entirely from the privates and just allow it to remain at the public institutions. Because in California, we have a robust public system of community colleges, Cal States, and UC schools. But then somebody did the math and said, wait a minute, there are more students who want to go to college than the Cal States and the UCs can handle, right? Now, you would think you would have started with that, but they finally discovered that and said, we actually need the privates. But we need privates that are going to make transferability a reality for these community college students. So they can get the first couple of years at a lower price, and they can transfer in and complete their degree at your institution. So I'm part of a work group that's just been formed with the AICCU, the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities in California. And this group is comprised of the provosts of 7 of the largest degree granting to transfer student institutions in California, and we're there. I think we're number 3 or 4 in the state. And part of that is because we have done work on this already, but we're going to have to do more. Because what we're looking toward is some kind of a statewide rubric that publics and privates will sign on to. And especially in this case, it'll be sponsored through the AICCU, and we'll be, as an institution, looking at how we can collaborate and cooperate with that so that we can speak into these arguments about the loss of Cal Grants. In other words, our ability to facilitate this will impact whether our students are able to get Cal Grants. So this is an important part of where we're moving forward. It's one of those future-looking things, anticipatory thinking, but it's actually now reality. And I'm going to ask you, as faculty members on our governance committees and on our departments looking at your majors, to help us make this work so that we can meet the needs of students, especially those who are the lowest and neediest students who want to get an APU degree. All right, 2 final things very quickly. I've been thinking over the summer about these 2 interrelated things. They are partnership and communication. How we can do a better job, how I can do a better job of partnering with you and communicating with you about all the things that are going on campus. And so I want to commit to you that we're going to do better at this, and we're going to continue to work at it in a significant way. So how can we partner? How can we do this well? I saw this couple walking ahead of me on the sidewalk this summer, and so I snapped a photo of them without them knowing. So I don't have a signed release, but I don't think you can see their face. But I thought it was a great example. If the grocery bag is too heavy, it's a lot easier to carry it if you both lend a hand. And so part of our challenge is how can we together carry the things that need to be carried across the university. I have seen this happen most effectively in departments on campus. Most of you live most of your life as a faculty member in your department, don't you? That's where you get to know people well. That's where you're interacting with people a lot. That's where you go to coffee. That's where you talk, and that's where you complain and get frustrated, but that's also where you come up with great solutions. I think we need to do partnership well across the university. In our departments, in faculty governance, between faculty and some of the support offices that we have on campus, and between faculty and administration. And I'm committed to doing whatever I can do to help that happen. Part of that is by being clear about our difference of perspective, that there are at times things that we see differently because of our position in life, that where we're located in our world impacts our view from that place. I've often said to people when I'm teaching systems theory that one thing about perspective is you just have to change it to understand the concept. So one suggestion I've made many times is if you have a habit of taking a particular walk, take it backwards. I don't mean walking backwards, but take the route backwards. It's amazing what you see when you walk at it from a different direction. And it becomes more clear that it's possible to see the same thing in different ways. I really appreciated John and Azu's talk this morning. Did you? Talking about confident pluralism and how we can have different perspectives and we can hold them strongly, but we can engage with each other in meaningful and deep conversation that's respectful and kind and generous without giving up who we are or what we believe. And I think it's out of that dialogue, out of the nexus of interaction between us, that change can arise. We do this for our students. We send them cross-culturally. We ask them to go on study abroad. We ask them to go to different environments. Many of our programs go to downtown Los Angeles and expose students to a different world than they experience here just 20, 30 miles away. We need to increase the level of accurate empathy, how we understand each other well. So empathy is getting in the other person's shoes, but accurate empathy is when you do that well, with skill, so that you actually feel what they're feeling in that moment, so that we can speak and join each other. And I believe confident pluralism is one approach to that. I think he gave us some good ideas to think about. But I also have to comment, as he alluded to this morning, that there are boundaries around the pluralistic approach we take in the messy middle at APU. You know, we say that we engage people of different perspectives and opinions, and we sincerely want to do that. But I will say that there are boundaries, and the boundary, and actually even in talking to John before our time this morning, he clarified for me that constitutionally, it's not just people who are committing acts of violence, because I was going to say the boundary is when people move over and commit acts of violence. He says, no, actually the boundary is a little closer. It's when people incite others to violence. Because when you're inciting someone to break the law, or you're inciting someone to hurt someone else, you've crossed that line around free speech. Now that's an important and interesting perspective. But I want to say, in light of the things that have happened in the last week and the last year and 2 years and 3 years, on Christian campuses and on college campuses, we have to pay attention to how we interact with each other in kind, loving, and respectful ways, but we will not allow violence, and we will not be part of violence. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German pastor who was an expert on listening and an expert on community. There's a quote attributed to him. They can't actually find it in his written works. And so maybe he didn't actually say it, but I would say that he lived it out in his life. And he said it this way: silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. And he lived that out. I think we need to live it out as well. And we need to speak into these things with conviction and purpose. And so I appreciate our president starting this morning with an awareness that we have to address these issues in a meaningful way across our society. And then finally, we're going to work better at communication. And so we have some things that we're doing. I trust that you're all reading the Provost newsletter. It has an item you can click on if you want more information. So it's something you can scan through quickly every other Monday morning and just say, is that something I need to know more about? And my hope is that you'll use that as a resource. And then there's an archive behind that of the previous information that's been sent out. We're also working with the Faculty Senate. And I'm committed to us having more open and transparent communication with the Senate this year. And so I appreciate what we're doing and Pam's efforts to help that happen as well. We are going to do that. Anticipatory thinking means taking time to think about what's ahead for us. So I'm going to ask you, as I close my time this afternoon, to commit some time in your schedule this year to thinking ahead about the challenges we are facing and will face as a university. Please join me in that. Thank you.
Dear man, from the beginning of time I've fought against your innocence. And so the fact that you keep falling into the same sin that you've been trying to avoid is no coincidence. I've assigned demons to rigorously study each and every one of you since birth, so we know what your weakness is. Our strength is made perfect in your weaknesses now. I want you to understand that I hate you, And so, Adam, Eve, take and eat. Your disobedience is so sexy to me. And I have a fetish for hypocrites. The way you go from right to wrong, from light to dark, that turns me on. So just defy him and justify sin. As you're already condemned, understand that I have used mankind to become the greatest diversion that mankind has ever seen. Because I never look like the problem. No. I make the problem look like human beings. See, when brothers could fight their brothers and sisters have strife with sisters, I have the victory. Because you end up with nations of wounded families, but an unscarred enemy. And it tickles me. Because I patented segregation. And so the separation of the brethren is just another extension of that invention. So no matter how many children are born into God's kingdom, I make sure they all see sections. But wait. No, wait. There's been a glitch in my plans that some of you may call grace. Because despite my flowery displays of affection, my showering with bouquets of temptation, how come when one rose everything changed? It was that Christ. Over 2,000 years ago, I manipulated and perverted men to capture the innocent lamb, to torture and murder him, for I knew once the only hope of humanity was dead, I would wear upon my head the glory of omnipotence as my crown, for I, ruler of darkness, prince of the air, could only rise when the sun was down, but he flipped the script on me. And the very things I would use to bind you forever, he turned around and used it to set you free. I'm disgusted. Because it just doesn't make sense. Why does he love you so much? Why does he long for your arrival like a child does December 25th? I know you. You tread upon his mercy with an attitude like the Scrooge, yet he sits and lets it pass and is still willing to take you back like the ghost of Christmas past. It's foolish, but I'm running out of time. This clock is like a bomb. It's tick, tick, ticking away, and those of you who don't watch it will watch it blow up in their face. Understand, I am always planning on bringing calamity so I can magic trick you into thinking he vanished, but despite my best efforts, he always finds a way to breathe a peace upon you that passeth my understanding. Of course, your Lord has already conquered me. Why do you think these weapons I've formed against you are not prospering? I am fated to die. Please, don't surrender to him. Though he says, I have life, if you spell devil backwards, at least you have lived. I would give you the world in exchange for your soul, so please satisfy my soul need. If the sky were the limit for your soul, I would reach, but thank your God that my sky has a ceiling called the soles of your feet. Dear man, it has come to my understanding that I'm fated to die. Fine then, die with me. Sincerely yours, your enemy. Thank you.
Join me again in thanking Lee Vaughn, very talented. Well, good afternoon. As we begin this new academic year, I'd like to call your attention to the many faculty accomplishments from this past academic year. On Monday of this week, you all received the biweekly Provost's newsletter, and that issue included a listing of the 35 faculty who have recently earned extended contracts, and the 34 of you who earned rank promotions. If you are one of those who recently earned an extended contract or rank promotion, can you please stand so we can congratulate you now? In addition, as we look at research activities this last academic year, there were 35 faculty who were awarded a faculty research grant, and 23 who were awarded an external grant last year. Please, if you are one of those, could you stand so we can recognize you as well? And now I'd like to call your attention to the 7 prestigious annual faculty awards granted by APU. And these were presented to the recipients at a small ceremony in May, and we'd like to call them to your attention now so that we can honor them together. They are all listed on the Provost's website, so if you'd like to read a description of the awards, they are readily available. So I'll announce each of the awards and ask the recipient to stand so that we can acknowledge them together. First, the Undergraduate Scholarly Achievement Award went to Robert Mullins from Biblical and Religious Studies. The Rose Liegler Graduate Scholarly Achievement Award went to Karen Longman, Higher Education. Alice V. Watkins Imago Dei Ethos Award for 2017 went to Alex Junn, Higher Education. The Service Learning Cornerstone Award this year went to Skyla Herod from Biology and Chemistry. The Chase Sawtelle Inspirational Award went to Ken Otto, University Libraries. The Teaching Excellence Award went to Abby Lynn Sellers, History and Political Science. And last but not least, the University Leadership Award went to Ryan Hartwig, Communication Studies. So congratulations to all of you. And now will you please welcome your faculty moderator, Dr. Pam Cohn.
Well, greetings, everyone. I want to extend a warm welcome to all of you. It's so great to be back with you at the start of our 2017-18 academic year. I hope all of you had a chance to have some times of refreshing this summer, even if they were small times. I think it's so important. Maybe it's a part of our Sabbath rest. For those who don't know me, as was Dr. Guido said, I'm Pam Cohn, and as faculty moderator, it's my job to manage faculty governance. I want to especially welcome the new faculty and let you know that I'm here to serve you and to be your voice to the APU Board of Trustees and administration. Please feel free to contact me anytime with questions and concerns you may have, at least the ones I might be able to help you with. And if I don't know the answer, then I will try and find someone who does. Our university scripture passage this year is one of my absolute favorite verses, Micah 6:8. He has told you what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to act justly, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. I feel so blessed to be part of a community that honors God and God's word above all. I hope we will all strive to treat each other with fairness and kindness in our attitudes and actions, as well as in our speech. I hope that we will put God first in all of our decisions, our communication, and our activities. This past year, I have been enjoying Dr. Barry Corey's book, Love Kindness. It's based on this passage. And I highly recommend it too. As I've been reading it, the old adage about accomplishing more with honey than with vinegar often comes to mind. It's a great book. It's a great read. And I'm encouraged to always try to be kind to others. In academia, I think that one of our big challenges is to walk humbly with God and with others. So we need to encourage each other toward that end. And I hope that we can all exemplify our university passage this year, both to each other and to our students. Last year, my goals as moderator were to foster kindness in all areas of faculty governance, to promote clear, honest, and open communication among faculty and with our administrators, and to work at rebuilding trust between faculty and administration that had been eroded over time through some top-down decisions. We made some good progress by maintaining an attitude of kindness and respect in all of our communities, our committees, our council meetings, and in the Senate, by keeping full faculty in the loop with our monthly reports, by working closely with the president and the provost to keep communication lines open. We also worked to identify what had undermined trust in the past, and we met to discuss how we could move forward from here. Having a special meeting with the Senate and the president and provost on May 12th was a good start. And their appointment of Dr. Andrew Barton and Dr. Rebecca Cantor to be the liaisons with Senate was a really helpful action. Additionally, their Y Project and the Trust think tank were both efforts on their part to understand better the issues that we face across the university and to work with various stakeholders to improve faculty and staff morale. This year, I would like to keep working on faculty governance and to continue to promote an atmosphere of kindness in all our faculty governance meetings, along with clear, open, honest, and transparent communication among faculty and between faculty and administration. Secondly, I would like to explore ways to continue rebuilding trust between us, between faculty and university leadership. And I want to work actively towards stronger faculty governance while still being supportive of administrative leadership. It's a fine balance. Finally, I plan to work with Senate to prioritize Senate's strategic plan and to address the prioritized list of faculty concerns in order, including such issues as evaluating how well we are doing the work of faculty governance, finalizing the proposed changes by the provost regarding faculty contracts, gaining more empowerment for making decisions at various levels of faculty endeavors, and revising the current grievance process that has some challenges. It is my hope that we can all work together to promote excellence in scholarship here at APU while maintaining our shared vision of keeping God first in all that we do in academia for the glory of God. I pray God's blessing on you, and I hope that you will all have a great year. God bless you all.
Even one sexual assault on our campus.
It's
one
on
too
me.
Report a sexual assault.
Act when we think
he or
someone is
she
in trouble.
wants to. Never blame the victim.
It's on me.
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 It's on me. It's on me.
It's on me.
It's on me.
It's on me.
It's
It's
on
It's
me.
on all of us.
One of the rising challenges in higher education today comes around Title IX and some of the concerns that are expressed through Title IX and addressed on the university campus. I went to a workshop at a conference this year on Title IX, and one of the things they talked about with an attorney talking about these issues, about the need for it on campus, but also how faculty are engaged or how faculty are involved in Title IX considerations today. So in light of that, we want to address that for just a few minutes this afternoon to make sure you're aware that you have an opportunity to help and a responsibility to assist around Title IX. We do this because it's consistent with our biblical convictions around respectful treatment of people. And we are committed to making sure that that happens on our campus. So we have a position of a Title IX coordinator, and we have others who work around investigations that are connected to that. Our institutional values say that any form of sex discrimination violates a person's fundamental rights and personal dignity, and we will not allow that to happen on our campus without full address. Personally, I will say it is on us. Each one of us needs to think deeply about how we respond to these issues and concerns when we're confronted with them. And they come at uncomfortable times because they come off the cuff. But when they do, we need to be prepared and ready to address them. So will you join me in welcoming Christine Guzman, our Title IX coordinator, Shino Simons, our Associate Dean of Students and a Title IX deputy, and John Bogus, our Executive Director of Human Resources and a Title IX deputy as well. Please welcome them.
Good afternoon, everyone. Are we awake still? All right. I am Christine Guzman, and I would like to say thank you for your time and for your attentiveness in these next few minutes as we talk about Title IX. But before we get started, I need our Title IX deputies to please stand. Wherever you are, we have John Bogus, who you already see, Rebecca Cantor. Where's Rebecca? And April Hoy, she's somewhere back there. Look around, there she is. Marla Love, Elaine Richardson, Renee Poza, and here's Shino Simons. These are your Title IX deputy coordinators. Still keep standing, everyone. And the reason why I want you to see them is because these are the folks that are very knowledgeable about Title IX. And they also, I have to say, this position has been in existence full-time for about a year, next week, I think. And they set the foundation, a really solid foundation for me to walk into this position and know that our policies and procedures are in place. And as I talk to other institutions, I can honestly tell you that APU is ahead of the game when it comes to Title IX policies and procedures. So I just want to give them all credit and say thank you for making my job a little bit easier. You can sit down now. So what you're going to hear from me today is you're going to hear an overview of Title IX, because throughout the year, I will be contacting the deans and chairs to come to you during already set aside time, because I know you're all busy, but also to set some time aside for you to go through our 12-month annual Title IX responsible employee training. And in that, you will receive more details about Title IX and what your responsibilities entail. I want to say thank you now to those chairs and deans who have already invited me. And so if you've already taken the training within the last 12 months, then we can wait a little bit of time. But those of you who haven't, I'll be contacting you this fall to get a few minutes of your time to give you the resources that you need. Speaking of resources, everybody on their table should have what I call a cheat sheet. And they are listing what your Title IX responsibilities are as faculty. And if you don't have any, we'll set some up on the stage afterwards. But best practices now are basically all institutions require that faculty are responsible employees when it comes to reporting sexual assault. Title IX is a federal law, and this policy protects everyone. It's not just students, but it's all APU community members. During school programs, during internships, study abroad programs, Title IX policy is about protecting our community from sexual assault, discrimination, anything related to gender discrimination. So the law says, and because we receive federal funds, that everybody has a right to receive the full benefits of their education. And what I appreciate about our time this morning is that Title IX really coincides and underscores our values as a community, that we value people. We are in a time we're in the messy middle, and I kind of feel like messy middle is my existence now. But it's also a ministry for reconciliation for people who have been assaulted and hurt, reconciliation to God, but also reconciliation to one another. And so Title IX, I see, is part of our ministry in higher education. Responsible employees include faculty, coaches, supervising staff, administrators, residence advisors, and any other student leaders. So what we are doing is we are having all of our new students go through a Title IX training when they come on campus. So part of this prevention program is to educate everyone about Title IX. Responsibilities that we have as employees is that we must report information about harassment, including sexual misconduct, to the Title IX coordinator. And this is just to looking at what our discrimination policy says. And again, it's a reminder how it just fits beautifully with the Title IX policy, and then also our commitment to respecting and honoring others. When you attend the training, you're going to get a overview about what Title IX encompasses. And this is just to say Title IX is not limited to sexual assault, but it's also other ways where gender discrimination can take place. What is our responsibility as an institution? When sex discrimination is reported, the university will take action to rectify the problem. We will promptly and equitably investigate, address the effects of sexual assault or harassment, and further prevent discrimination or retaliation from taking place. So that's the overview. That is the goal that we would like to see. I wanted to just touch briefly on prevention and why we are taking this step. Sexual assault covers a wide range of behavior. A lot of times we think of sexual assault as forcible, non-consensual intercourse. But sexual assault can vary from unwanted touch to stroking somebody's hair, to anything that is unwanted or where people don't receive affirmative consent. Prevention requires that we understand the way that these factors impact and influence violence in our society. What bystander intervention does, which is what we are providing, is we are establishing healthy norms around gender and sexuality. And prevention education is necessary at multiple levels, which is why we are here in front of you today. So we begin with prevention education. We coordinate resources, which you'll hear about in a little bit. And then also when we hear reports about sexual assault, discrimination, we investigate and adjudicate. And finally, when we respond with our empathy, when we contact your Title IX deputies or your coordinator, we are taking steps to restore the dignity of the person who has been hurt. And our compassion and our ability to look at the big picture, that even though it feels uncomfortable and messy, because as faculty, you're on the front lines. You're the first point of contact for our students, and they trust you. And part of what being in this power of influence and relationship is that you are perceived as somebody who can make it right, and which you are. And I know our students trust you, and I thank you, those of you who have come to me and called me with concerns. So I just wanted to say you're not alone in this, that we are here to support you. We have resources. My office, I'm available to you. And now I'm going to have Shino come up and answer the question that I learned as a researcher: why should we care? Why is this problem relevant to me?
I have two mics. I don't know which one to use.
You can use that one.
So, again, my name is Shino Simons, and I've had the privilege of working with many of you related to this issue, unfortunately at times. But I thought it would be helpful for you to see some statistics that are out there. So did I press the right one? Yes. So 1 in 5 women, 1 in 16 men may experience sexual assault during their college experience. And that's a pretty high number. But I thought it would be good for you to see it because we wish this didn't happen on our campus, but it happens on our campus. I've worked with many students. I've worked with faculty and staff related to this issue. And here are some statistics that are also out there, but I'm not going to read all of it, but I wanted to highlight 2. Freshmen and sophomore for undergraduate students are more likely to be victimized in this way, and especially during September, October. So the first 2 months of the school year tends to be a time where this type of behavior is increasing. And so we believe that by having you partner with us, that we can help our students. You are engaging with our students on a regular basis. And we believe that we can't do this to care for our students and care for our community without you. So thank you again for working with us. And then the last part where it says 82% of the victims would say that they are forever changed because of the experience that they've had. And for ourselves, when the issues arise, we do take it seriously, and we would like to address the concerns and bring some sort of resolution to the situation. However, the other piece that we need to recognize is the fact that these people are impacted forever. So if they are in your class, know that even if the issue is resolved as far as the incident goes, their behavior, the way they see life and all of that may be different. So if we could continue to care for them, that would be wonderful. And unfortunately, at APU currently, we do not have any specific statistics that we could say this is what the numbers are on our campus. But there was a study that was done by Association of American Universities, and they did a study in 2015. So it's a pretty recent statistics that's out there. So I thought it might be helpful, although it may not directly impact our numbers, for you to see what does it look like if we were to apply some of that statistics. So here you go. If we were to apply that statistics to our undergraduate students, both FTE and part-time students, we have 5,762 total undergrads last year. And 1 in 5, right? So 1 in 5 women. That means 763 women may have experienced sexual assault, which ranges, like what Christine said. It's not necessarily forcible rape kind of thing, but it could range from unwanted touching to non-consensual sexual intercourse. So it's a wide range, but 763, that's a pretty high number. 4.2% of our students may have experienced stalking during their time here, which equates to 242 students. 11.7%, which is 674 students, may have experienced sexual assault, which includes rape, but forcible, unwanted. So it wasn't just unwanted, but it was a forcible, sometimes incapacitated type of interactions. And 63.3% of those victims would say that they knew that the university would take it seriously, which is good because that's 483 students who would say that. But my concern is the other side. 280 students would say that they believe that we wouldn't take it seriously, that it wouldn't matter to us. And so this is the plea that I have with all of you and for myself as well, that when a student comes to you to share about their experience, please, please let us know so that we can work with you, so that we can partner with you to bring not just resolution, but a process where we could walk with them and care for them and provide some sort of, not just resources, but ways for them to be restored to the best that we can. And so, again, I thank you so much for the partnership that you give us on a consistent basis. And this isn't just our students, undergraduate students' issues. This is all of our issues. So thank you again for taking the time.
So some very sobering statistics there that Shino provided and a good overview that Christine provided. So what's the role of a faculty member? That resource you have on the table is really helpful. It's about support primarily for our students, and we don't expect you to become Title IX investigators. We don't expect you to be clinicians, but we do hope that you will pay attention to student behaviors, student interactions between one another, also the way that they're acting. If there's something that campus safety has put around that says if you see something, say something, I think that makes sense in this realm as well. Pay attention to students. Recognize your role. So some of you play a pastoral role outside of APU. Some of you have a counseling practice. But when you're in the faculty role, you're not a confidential resource. So what that means is when a student reports to you or when you observe an incident, you have a responsibility to report it to the institution, and that's through the Title IX coordinator, Christine. Some of you have really thought this through a lot, and you've said to students on the front end, if you're going to share with me about certain kinds of things, then I'm going to have to report those things. And that's, I think, a good way to do it if that's most comfortable for you. Otherwise, you're going to have a responsibility to report what the student reports to you. There are appropriate university resources you can refer people to, but if it's a Title IX related issue, it should go to Christine Guzman, our Title IX coordinator. Importantly, you know the confidential offices on campus, and they're listed here. So the University Counseling Center serves in that capacity, Office of Campus Pastors and the Chaplain's Office, and finally the Student Health Center. And what that means is when a student goes there, the university is not put on notice about that incident. That is, the student has control of whether that's going to be a reported incident or not. And they'll get counsel about that, they'll get support, they'll get all the appropriate resources that we need to provide our students in these situations. Off campus, there's also a host of resources. Perhaps most notably is Project Sister. We partner with them a lot. They do a lot of great work. We also work closely with the Azusa PD. If you're at a regional campus, if it's an appropriate thing, you may also involve the local police department there. Sex discrimination is not solely a student issue, and as I close this afternoon, really I want to point out the importance of our interactions with each other around campus as faculty and staff interacting with each other, as well as with students. Sexual harassment and sex discrimination are prohibited, and Mark spoke to that, and they don't have a place at APU. If you experience either one of those, the first place to come is Human Resources. You may also call Christine as Title IX coordinator. Our offices work very closely together. Much like if there's a bias incident, we work closely with the Center for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusive Excellence. We do the same with the Title IX office, and so we're working together to support our faculty, staff, and students. I think we missed a slide. So let me just make a couple of comments here. This morning was great. I think it laid a lot of groundwork for how we can create an environment that's a God-honoring environment here. John Wallace mentioned the new resources on your employee portal, and I hope you'll go in there. There's a great series of videos. One is Dr. Rukhchan Fernando, and he talks about, as professionals, that we're always cognizant of our audience. And so as professionals, we're always thinking about what's the other thinking? What's their experience? How will they respond to this? How will they think about the things that I'm talking about? And we've seen a lot of different kinds of incidents over the years, and I think three things I want to emphasize. One is just your conversation. careful about the things you say. James' counsel is good, right? Be quick to listen and slow to speak. That's good counsel. Particularly watch humor. John and Azu today talked about the importance of humor as just a way that we build relationship, a way that we maintain relationship. It is really important. But be careful about your humor. It's easy for that to go into the wrong direction, and we need to check ourselves on that. And finally, boundaries. Make good judgments about your boundaries, not only with students, certainly, but also with each other. And I think as we work together, we can create the kind of environment we want. In the Cultivating Difference Makers book you got today, this is professional. It says, we commit to conducting ourselves professionally, pursuing excellence in our work, treating others with dignity and respect, and leading by example. And I think that's a great mantra for us. Christine?
Thank you, John. So as we close out, thank you. We would like to invite you to take the pledge. If you go to itsonus.org, you will have the opportunity to take the pledge, and it's just saying that I'm standing up against sexual assault. You can also follow us on Instagram, Title IX at APU, and you will receive information, events that are happening, and then finally, what you saw earlier was our promo for the It's On Us video, and so here in a couple of weeks, we're going to have the full video ready, and you'll be able to view it, and we really thank you again for your support.
So our bodies are a temple, and I think we are created to move and to take care of ourselves. We can't determine the number of years we're going to live. Only God knows when we're going to die, but we can definitely make the most of those years. My name is Matt Klingler. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I graduated from APU in 2016 from the Doctor of Physical Therapy program. So here at Village Fitness, I am using my expertise as a movement science specialist to help people. My PT degree is now helping me to help people that haven't been injured yet and are looking to, not get hurt, to lose weight, to get in great shape and stay there long term. So basically we're helping people optimize their function, which is really cool. And I think my degree at APU is a big part of that. I think life in general is meant to be lived in community. So that's the big emphasis here is on community. It's why we do group personal training. When you know that there are other people that are working towards the same goals as you, you're gonna be much more likely to show up at your workouts. When you see the person next to you really pushing themselves, you're gonna push yourself harder. My work as a physical therapist at Kaiser is totally different from what I do here as personal trainer, business owner of Village Fitness. I'm working at Kaiser with people that are in pain, that are lacking function. Any physical therapy, people are usually at a low point in their lives. And the cool thing about that is I get to step into that low point and maybe help them overcome it, to build into them, get them out of that time in their life. On the other hand, here I'm helping people to optimize their lives and to make the best of it, which is also awesome. So kind of hitting both ends of the spectrum. Something like Village Fitness is an investment in your health. Something like going to physical therapy and spending the time to do that is an investment in your health. And so it's cool for me to be able to be at that point where people are making that investment in their health, their fitness, their body, and trying to make the best of their life.
One of the things we do well at the university is to think about important issues. And so as I was considering the issue of organizational trust and how we facilitate trust on campus, it just seemed logical to create a think tank around the issue of trust. So we looked for faculty who had demonstrated either research or in their discipline work in this area of trust, or they'd done presentations on trust. And we invited them to come together to give some deep thought to how we facilitate enhanced trust on campus so that we can work together more effectively. Dr. Edgar Barron chaired that group, and he's going to come and share with you about the members, the commission and the members of the group, and what they found as their results, at least of the initial discussion that they had. So will you join me in welcoming Edgar Barron?
Good afternoon, colleagues. I know it is late in the day, and I really want to thank you for your continued engagement. I'm going to ask you to hold on just a little while longer and stay engaged, because as faculty, we all know how important engagement is to learning. Can I at least get one amen? By the way, Dr. Stanton, I want, for the record, since the Trust think tank was established this past academic year, I'm hopeful that there would be some consideration to funding in retrospect via grant for our efforts. I'm just lobbying. So I've had a lot of, literally, I've had probably a half dozen conversations since John kicked off the kickoff, and our speaker spoke about confident pluralism. I've had about a half dozen conversations that really could be themed around the idea of the difficulty presented by difference, right? And we've dialogued together about how hard it is to navigate the space or the dissonance between this differing opinion or that differing opinion or this position and that position. And it seems to me that our sort of theory in, our espoused theory, if you will, sometimes is slow to catch up with our theory in practice. Or in other words, it's easy to say it, it's hard to operationalize it. So I want you to just hold that thought kind of in consideration as we walk through the process that we engage as a Trust think tank. One more preliminary observation, maybe two. One has to do with one of our university passages, the one that we find in Acts chapter 2. It talks about they had all things in common. You have the sheet there on your tables. And then it talks about them selling things and having sort of a common use. And I want to point out that that word in common is very important to me, and I hope it is to you too. It doesn't mean that we all have, you know, 2 eyes and 10 fingers and those things that we do have in common. The word literally means it belongs to everyone, belonging to everyone. The Greek word is koinos, belonging to everyone. And so if we kind of embrace this idea about trust as something that belongs to all of us, then we can have what I call this interdependent reciprocity, right? It really is up to all of us. And so we were asked as a think tank to come together and provide some space to do, and you can see the definition up there with respect to providing information, ideas, and advice. And we were very, very intentional in the commission, in the Trust think tank, not to come up with a prescription for trust, because we know that in this room, interpersonal relationship is always going to lead to some level of conflict. We're going to leave that to Matthew 18 to be our prescription for resolution. But we also know that we're not looking for satisfaction, we're not looking for uniformity, we're looking for a place that we can have an exchange of ideas and even encounter conflict without going to war. So somebody described recently that the inability to have conflict is why we have war. We want to have the ability to have conflict. How do we navigate that? So there's a brief description of what a think tank is. I was told this is not direction sensitive. Here we go, the charter. So this is what we were asked to engage around by the Office of the Provost, with specific focus on faculty and administration. And again, if you keep in mind this idea of interdependent reciprocity, which, by the way, is kind of bore out in Scripture, all through the Scripture, that I have lack and you have need, I have lack, we both have abundance, we both have lack. So it kind of draws us into this relationship that makes us interdependent. And so this idea of having this trust examination and the construct of faculty and administration is where we began. I would like the members of the commission, if you would, to stand. These are the folks that worked tirelessly with us. Would you all stand if the folks on the Trust think tank are here? Please stand. We want to thank you and acknowledge you publicly. We had the opportunity to meet 5 or 6 times throughout the course of the spring semester, so not a lot of time, but I really want to thank those that gave of their time to participate in what I consider a very substantive and important endeavor. So let me walk you through our process as a commission. If I toggle between think tank and commission, think tank seems so lofty, and I was honored and humbled to be a part of it. So if I use the word commission, I feel like I have a greater sense of belonging in that whole activity. It's okay to laugh. So let me take you through our process and how we addressed this and how we sort of attacked it. And then I'll kind of wind up giving you some of our discoveries, and then we're going to get you all involved in helping to construct the rest of this. Okay, fair enough? So one of the things we recognized right up front, and it was one of the contributions at our first meeting from one of our members, that said we need to recognize that inherently in higher ed, we have a structure that in some ways lends itself to conflict. Now, conflict's not bad, but the structure in some ways is created in an unavoidable clash of sort of ideals and objectives and purpose. And so we leaned on the work of Bowman and Gallos in reframing administrative leadership to illustrate what I call the structure conundrum. The administrative structure in most institutions kind of resembles corporate structures in terms of hierarchy. There are C-level positions, and there are vice president positions, and there are directors and supervisors. And they deal with a myriad of issues having to do with budgets and enterprise goals and staffing ideas and governance, external competition. We talked a lot about that this morning, where we find ourselves as an institution. Values, trying to make sure that where the institution is going is clear to all, trustees and donors and alumni, and on and on and on. And so this kind of hierarchical structure has very sort of defined direction, goals, and outputs. And then you have the faculty structure, which tends to be, for the most part, very flat. So I heard it described once that faculty are a group of independent contractors, right? Because the last time I signed my contract, there was no reference to the work that you did, but a lot of reference to the work that I did, right? And as a faculty member, there are things that preoccupy us, like teaching and learning and research, and we leverage our individual expertise and our autonomy. We lean on peer assessment and collective power, individual creativity. You can see that there is a sort of flat kind of notion to faculty sort of interaction, and these arrows were strategically and intentionally placed to show that they kind of bump into each other. So we just had to own the fact, and so rather than fix this, because this is not something that's going to be fixed, or quite frankly needs to be fixed, we just simply decided as a commission early on that we were just simply going to own that. And with this being a reality, then how now do we move forward in thinking about the idea of trust? This kind of has a mind of its own because I'm not moving these slides. So can we go back to the previous slide? Thank you. I know I have skills, but I'm not even that advanced. So one of the first things we wanted to do as a group is we wanted to center ourselves, because for the most part, the large majority of the think tank members are faculty. So we had to locate ourselves in this whole dynamic in terms of where we fall on the trust spectrum. We did have a meeting early on that there was an airing of grievances, if you will, in the meeting, and I remember leaving that meeting as a chair thinking I might have let that kind of get away from me in terms of some of the opinions that were expressed, and so I called one of the other committee members and I said, I feel like I let that go too far. And that committee member said, I don't think so. I think we all needed to sort of locate ourselves, find out where we were, because we really haven't kind of had the environment or the time to think and talk and express, and so we did that. Once we did that, we thought, what can guide us through our process, if you will? So we adopted a contextual framework that is the reflective practitioner, some of Sean's work on how we get at the things we do and the results we get. So we as a team wanted to say, how are we going to think through this process? So this will be familiar to some of you. So Sean would argue that you have strategies and techniques there in that center circle, or actions. There are things that you do that get results that you get. Dr. Stanton alluded earlier to Heifetz's work that talks about adaptive and technical. This is kind of the technical realm. We know what to do, so rather than waste time, let's get at it, get it done, and we get some results. We're not always happy with the results we get, and so we go back and we modify the things that we do, right? Are you with me? That's called a sort of a single loop process. We're just doubling back, doing what we know how to do, and maybe hoping we get different results. He would then argue that we need to examine, in order to get what I would call adaptive sort of results, we need to go back and do what? We need to examine assumptions. We need to go back and examine assumptions, because in examining assumptions, then maybe you have the opportunity to significantly impact your actions and get marked results. Right? So why is that important? It's important because we really need an outside perspective, oftentimes that's different than ours, to be able to even bring to the surface the things that we're assuming. Because if we're assuming it, it's probably somewhat subconscious, but in the interaction with others and different others, our assumptions can be made apparent. And this is what he calls double loop thinking. There's a quote there that I borrowed from Bowman and Gallos that says, leadership success rests in the quality of the choices made by leaders, and leaders is expressed there in the most generic terms, to include faculty and administration. And leaders make better choices when they are mindful about their thought process and their action. That's the ability to examine your assumptions. So we're still in team mode on the think tank, wanting to make sure that we don't jump into technical resolution mode and start doing the same thing that we've always done, because our best approach at problem solving oftentimes is to put what? A committee together. I can tell y'all tired, because early in the morning you would have been all over that one, right? We established a committee to fix the problem. We didn't want to fall into that. We had to examine our own assumptions and then see where we might be able to get a clue or some insight into institutional assumptions. Which takes us to my Olympic rings. Very early on in our process, we thought, you know, one of the things that we have done a lot lately is we have assessed and surveyed our community. And we've done that in a variety of ways. We've done that with the Best Christian Workplace, valuing people. We've done that through Project Y. We've done that through the Campus Climate Study. We continually do that through the Higher Education Research Institute out of UCLA, a suite of assessments. And we've done that through leadership development, which Dr. Eileen Holm is kind of leading us through. So, and these are just to name a few. So we're always assessing and surveying, and I've heard many of you wax fairly eloquent in terms of assessing our ability to assess, our propensity to assess. And what you basically say is, we're not really learning anything new. We kind of know what these things are going to tell us. The question is once we get the information, what do we do with it? So we thought, wouldn't it be a great idea for us thinkers to pull together the results of all of these assessments to see what they are telling us, and maybe be able to start kind of getting inside the idea or the mind or the head of the institution with respect to assumptions around trust. Now please keep in mind, trust is a vast, vast topic. We're really talking about the ability of the organization to have some measure of credibility in its words and in its actions, keeping its promises, right? So the reason for the Olympic rings is to create this anticipation for the Olympics coming in 2028, all right? It keeps changing. But also for an exercise that we're going to do at the end of this, right? That's why they're connected. That valuing people we found was really connected to Project Y. You know, in the qualitative portion of those surveys, we looked at some of the results and we found some of the almost verbatim, some of the same qualitative responses showed up in campus climate, project-wide, valuing people, some of the leadership stuff, and it was substantiated by the quantitative feedback we got through Harry. Isn't that incredible? So wouldn't it make sense then for us to put our heads and hearts together that are leading these entities to begin to ask ourselves, how can we respond to what these things are telling us in large part that have a lot to do with institutional organizational trust? Okay, so in case you're not clear yet, we're talking about organizational or institutional trust versus interpersonal trust. We're all accountable for our interpersonal trust issues one with another. And again, we have a prescription in the scriptures that help us get at that in Matthew 18. So we're not dealing with that. And that may be important to some of you, and I'm not diminishing that. But that's not what we talked about. We talked about this idea, the overarching belief that an organization in its communication and behavior is competent, open and honest, it's concerned, it's reliable, and worthy of identification with its goals, norms, and values. In other words, there's a consistency with the walk and the talk. And we borrowed this from a text called Building the High Trust Organization. You see the authors there. One of our committee members, Dr. Ryan Hartwig, recommended this text right at the outset. And one of the reasons he recommended the text, he's actually a contributing author, and so all the sales of, this is a tough crowd. Actually, it's a book that Dr. Hartwig has worked with, and it's authored by a university president and co-authored by 2 faculty members. So we thought the insight might be appropriate. If you look at these tenets, if you look at competency, openness and honesty, concern, reliability, worthy of identification, it has to do with the way that they frame trust organizationally. These are the 5 dimensions of trust that come right out of that textbook. So we use this as our conceptual framework now to begin to assess, if you will, or try to make sense out of the assumptions that were bubbling up from all the assessing that we were doing. Are you with me so far? So you see the 5 there. Competence simply means that do we believe that those that we have given charge to steward aspects of the institution have the competence to do that, the demonstrated competence to do that? Because if they don't, trouble will arise with respect to your ability, our ability to trust whichever leader that is at whatever part of the institution. Openness and honesty is pretty clear, but it has mostly to do about communication, right? If you remember our speaker this morning, he mentioned that trust is based on our ability, and I'm going to read it here, to be honest about our differences. To be honest about our differences. The third item is concern for employees and stakeholders. Again, fairly clear, but that there's a demonstration, not just in word, but in action, that we really are concerned about employees and stakeholders, and so the valuing people process is really getting at this. A process that started before we launched the think tank. The fourth is reliability, and reliability is around this idea, say what you're going to do and then do what you say, is reliability. Is the organization and the people in it, are they reliable? And the final one is identification, and again, we have our spouse theory and we have our theory in use. Do those 2 really line up? So those are the 5 dimensions. We went through each of these dimensions, but we really focused on these 2, or I'm going to focus on these 2 for the purpose of our time together today. Openness and honesty and reliability. So let me give you a few of the tenets, and these are just a few. Now, I've moved from kind of our process and how we got to thinking about this idea now to how are we going to respond to it out of this conceptual framework. Can we go back one? we're not working here. So just advance it one. Okay. So dimension 4, and I'm just going to give you a few of the elements out of dimension 4. So what the process in the text where there were a number of institutions and organizations that were interviewed around the idea of reliability, here are some of the things that came out of that survey from people across the institution. So not just the leaders or the followers, but also the followers and the leaders. One thing is follow through with commitments. Very simple. Number 2 is consistent day-to-day behavior. Number 3, consistent positive performance. Now, this doesn't mean that there's no failure or no room for failure. It simply means that there's a consistency in the organization that is marked, that is predictable, and you can anticipate it because it's consistent. Responses are timely. You get what you need when you need it. And that employee satisfaction is promoted. That's reliability. Okay? The next dimension should have one for dimension 2. Okay, go back. Okay, apologize, I think I'm missing a slide. The openness and honesty slide simply said, as they surveyed this vast group of people, the idea of communication emerged over and over and over. And it basically talked about that for all parties involved, that they would get communication in a style and a manner and a time frame that was usable to them, right? So I'm excited about the Provost newsletter. If you remember, we would get bombarded with information, most of which, again, depending on the time frame, might not have been as useful. But with the newsletter, we can go through and select the thing that's most useful to us. If you're a chair, you click on chairs and you got what you need when you need it, right? And that the information that was being disseminated was worthy of trust. In other words, there was a consistency, not only what was being promised, but what was being delivered. And then that we were able to provide the type of information that someone would need when they needed it. So you can see how this interdependent reciprocity works. We're always providing information, and we always need information, and the tenets around that have to do with openness and honesty. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't be things within an organization, and the text brought this out, that need to be measured in terms of their release. The intent is not to deceive, but the intent is to make sure that we don't get out ahead of ourselves. But this is basically talking about day-to-day interactions with our colleagues and with our leaders, right? Okay. So after we examined these tenets in these dimensions, and we were looking at the data from all these surveys, we were, on one hand, surprised, and on the other hand, very pleased as we begin to see consistency in terms of our action with respect to our ability to begin to respond to these. So if, in fact, we can buy the idea that these are indicators of building high trust, and I think the word building there has to do with something that's never going to stop. It's going to be sort of perpetual. But we are on the way to building because we began then to take a look at our promise booklet. Each of you got this on your tables this morning. So we started asking the participants and all of those entities represented in those Olympic rings, what are you finding? What do you come up with? And where are we capturing some of that? Well, we begin to capture it here in this booklet. And so the next chart is just a few excerpts from what comes out of this promise book around the idea of community, professional, lifelong learner, and character, those categories that we talked about earlier. So I want you to notice, and this is just a handful that I picked out, that we picked out, just a handful, and see how they map into or respond to some of the things that are characteristic of building high trust in an organization. By the way, things that we have identified, codified, and are going to look to operationalize. That was quite a soliloquy for the preachers in the room. Number one is, or the first one, is follow Christ together. There's a mutual commitment implicit in that, right? There's a mutual commitment implicit in that first statement. If we're challenged with interpersonal trust, this following Christ together should compel us to exercise Matthew 18. I don't know what your experience has been. My experience around Matthew 18 is it is more preached than practiced. It's just a reality. Sometimes we're more comfortable with telling our colleague about what we don't like about the other colleague, but not going to that colleague itself. I think we're calling the institution to a higher level of behavior around what it means to follow Christ together, taken right out of the book. Support one another for the good of the whole. There's a little bit of implied selflessness in this second bullet. If we agree that the good of the whole is motivating us not to give up who you are, please don't do that, please don't lose who you are, but maybe it's not the most important thing for your agenda to be satisfied at the moment if the whole is going to benefit. Know one another. Our speaker this morning talked about sitting around small tables and having meals together and lingering. Live out the university values together. Living implies that there's going to be more than just a random brushing up against each other. Value the contributions of all our community members. Speak the truth in love under all circumstances. I had a mentor tell me once that love without truth is hypocrisy, and truth without love is brutality. So the remedy then is to speak the truth in love. It's okay to be upset with someone, but go to them. Think carefully before you speak, write, or act. I should probably put that one just ahead of the other one. But think. Deliver on promises and commitments. I would much rather under-promise and over-deliver, but deliver nevertheless. And then finally, and again, this is just a small selection of what's in this book, is communicate openly, honestly, and frequently. When in doubt, communicate openly, honestly, and frequently. So I'm going to suggest that we have here our espoused theory, our aspirational theory. This is who we want to be. The question now is, how do we operationalize this? How do we live this out? More importantly, how do you live it out? Right? So I'm going to ask you to do something, and this is in part for demonstration and affect, but it's also so that you'll kind of wake up and be engaged. So I'm going to ask you all to stand up. If you're able, stand up. And I'm going to have you, I want to demonstrate something that will hopefully give us more insight about this insidious thing called perspective. Dr. Stanton talked about it earlier, because it is always operating, and we need to be able to know how we can tap into it, especially when the perspective is different than ours, okay? So I want everybody in the room to take your right hand, or if you're left-handed, your dominant hand, raise it over your head, high, like first grade high. I got the right answer high. Like you want your students to respond in class? Exactly. Ooh, I got it. Then I want you to point your finger at the ceiling, because I want you to rotate your hand clockwise. So imagine there's a clock on the wall facing you. So rotate in a nice circle. Rotate a nice, generous circle. Go clockwise. Nice, generous circle. Now I want you to lower your hand below your chin, and you tell me which way it's turning. A lot of educated folks in the room. Which way is it going? Is it going counterclockwise? If you did it right, it's going counterclockwise, right? So we're a very enlightened group at this point, so what happened? Right, it's perspective. But tell me the dynamic of what we just did. We looked at the very same thing from a different vantage point and saw something totally different. He's still working it out in the back. He's a man, right? We looked at the very, listen to how profound this is, because this is right in our backyard. You looked at the very same thing from a different angle and saw something totally different. So my question is, which one was right? Now we say both, and we have a naysayer that says neither. What we do know is that the way that we respond to that dynamic interpersonally is to adopt a zero-sum sort of position most of the time and say clockwise is right because it's the way that I've been raised, it's my tradition, it's what the Bible says for those of us that want to go to the Bible and proof text. That was on purpose. We'll position and we'll argue, and then the argument will create division. The division will create separation, and we don't have interdependent reciprocity. That thing goes away, right? So let's say neither of them are right, right? So I think that might be a closer answer, but, but the real answer, I think, is both are incomplete. Both are incomplete. So now the question is, how do we move towards completion? How do we move towards filling in the gap? And the way that we do that is we ask, in my opinion, the most disarming, sincere question that we can ask, and the question is, to my counterclockwise brethren and sistren, help me understand. Now I'm seeking to understand rather than be understood. The posture of my heart changes because I've sought to be sensitive to your position. Doesn't mean I have to give up being clockwise. Are you with me? But now I'm going to understand how you see the world from a counterclockwise perspective. Right? Remember, we're talking about trust. We're talking about being open and honest. We're talking about self-examination. We're talking about examination of variability in our lives, of assumptions in our lives, right? So now all of a sudden, I'm open to hear where I lack and where you have abundance. Doesn't mean I have to give up being clockwise, but I can appreciate the counterclockwise. And here's what I might find out. Kimberly, if you're a clockwise person and I say, help me understand, the first thing you might say is, well, Ed, I've never really thought about that. I just know that every time I look down, and I would say, look down? You look down? I never heard of such a thing. I grew up looking up. Everybody in my family was uplookers. I never knew anybody that looked down. But now that I do, wow, you do see differently because you look differently, you gaze differently than I do. And now I can discover. So right about now, you all are wondering, when am I going to have you sit down? I know, because I know you. Not just yet. So that's now leaning into the difference. Doesn't mean you give up what you are convinced of. I'm just hoping that what you would agree with is you're probably somewhat incomplete, at least experientially, with how we view the world. Okay? Have a seat. So we're going to move into a table activity, and so let me set that up. But let me start by saying I had the opportunity to speak in chapel 2 or 3 years ago, the undergrad chapel here on campus, and the students all stand up to worship, and then the speaker comes up, and like most good church folk, they wait to be given permission to have a seat. And so they were all standing, and I went through this whole thing about what it means to be uncomfortable, leaning into discomfort, and choosing discomfort over comfort, and how you grow more when you're disoriented and all that good stuff. And they were like, right on, yeah, preach it, brother, do your thing. And I said, so in solidarity for those who are uncomfortable, we're going to remain standing for the majority, for the duration of chapel. And they did like you all did. They laughed. I said, no, I'm serious. We're going to stand. And then I said, in solidarity with you, I'm going to stand too. But I wanted them to understand experientially and experience some measure of discomfort. And I'm going to ask you now to do the same thing, not by standing, but in this exercise around your table or across the table. We're going to try to operationalize this because, the big challenge is, and I'm owning this, I agree what's in this book, but sometimes I don't know how to do this. I'm not sure how to get there. And I want to create a bridge between what I say and what I do so that the results that I want will actually be achieved in my life. So can we put the prompts up on the final slide? So here's the idea. It's 2028. and the Olympics are here. And we're all taking time off from work because traffic's too bad to get to work. And APU has a strong, we already have this, by 2028, we have a strong foundation built on openness, honesty, and reliability as we've described it. I want you to talk in groups, tables and across the table, and to begin to describe what we did to get to this place. I'm futuring you here, right? Not what will we do, but we're already there. Reflect back and say, what did we do? Secondly, talk amongst yourself and share what you did specifically. And then finally, what did the administration do? Okay? So we're going to take a few minutes to do this on your tables. If you would, if someone can be a scribe, if something profound or even close to it comes up, write it down, because we would love to have you email that. And I think we're going to use provost@apu.edu, right? To send those ahead. So we're futuring. Olympics are here. We are at high trust in these two dimensions. Your job is to discuss what we did to get here, what you did specifically, and then what can administration do. Is that clear? Take a few minutes and I'll be back with you in a little while.
Thank you for your dialogue around the tables. If you were the scribe at your table, please remember to send that in to the email address, provost@apu.edu. We'd like to get some of your thoughts and ideas so that we can work through them. So I would like to get you out of here by 3 o'clock. That gives me 50 seconds. Thank you, yes. Thank you for your time here today. And we appreciate your attention through the long afternoon. As you're leaving today at the different exits, pick up a copy of John and Azu's book. My encouragement to you, yeah, wasn't he great? Wasn't he great? Yeah. To me, having a faculty member speak to faculty really makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, he's someone who's in the game and he's thinking about it constantly. My suggestion, maybe form a book club. Get together and study this together, spend some time reading it and talking about it. Do some of that meal time, get a group and go together to lunch. And if it's late enough in the semester, you can do that in the new faculty commons. Thank you for being here today. Go with God's blessing. Look forward to a great year. Thank you.